this story about this new expanding investigation by the FBI. One, does it surprise you? Two, is this part of what you're looking at now? The FBI going in one direction, the State Department going in another. It very much like somebody's let the cages open in a zoo and everybody's running in all directions. Good evening to you, Sarah.
Good evening. What this particular story indicates is that the FBI is sensing that perhaps the Clinton camp hasn't been entirely forthcoming with them. This is different from a perjury charge in that anything the Clinton campaign said that caused them to expend additional resources to verify whether that was true could feed into this particular violation. So it's a little bit more broad than a perjury charge, and it leaves her more vulnerable.
Sarah, nothing that Hillary Clinton has said about her emails has been true. She said it was for personal use. No. She said it was because she wanted one device. No, she had two. She said no classified information. Oops, 4, Inspector General says she has classified information on it. 4, she says it's secure. Well, now we learn it was in some closet in Denver. So why would it take the FBI this long to get serious after so many falsehoods, publicly lying to the American public?
Well, we don't know what the FBI's interactions have been with, like you said, the company in Denver behind closed doors. Now, this new company in Connecticut that managed the cloud version of her emails. So there's a lot of different leads that have presumably come out of the FBI investigation as opposed to the Benghazi investigation, which is what first brought the email use to light. So as they're following up on their leads, we're just getting sort of a small sliver of an idea of what they're working on. There could be a lot more to this investigation than we know at this point.
I'm an old cynic about the Clintons. They're very good. They're very, very good. And one of the things that was especially celebrated in the 20th century was the Clinton ability to leak before the investigation goes forward. In other words, I learned to understand that the Clinton attorneys were just as likely sources of information as anyone else in the government, somebody whispering, somebody passing a document secretly around. My question to you, Sarah, and this is unanswerable, but I'm just so suspicious. Why we have this news now? Why do we get anything? Comey, the FBI, they're very good. They don't tell anybody anything. This is the Department of Justice. You deal with them. You deal with the State Department. It's not just their jobs. It's their reason for being to be secure. And all of a sudden we have this story in the middle of, but it's 48 hours till Mrs. Clinton sits down with Bernie Sanders, isn't it?
Bernie Sanders has shown no interest, though, in going after Mrs. Clinton, which tells you that he's not serious about actually winning.
But get the bad news out. Get it out so you can control it.
But Sarah, how good are your sources on something like this? I mean, are you talking to people who are looking at these documents? Are you talking to the person who talked to the person who saw the documents? How do you report this story?
Exactly, because the FBI, like John said, is so notorious for being closed-mouthed, and even the Attorney General has weighed in on these leaks need to stop. The only time when I could argue that the FBI had a reason to leak to the press about this investigation is after President Obama said on 60 Minutes a few weeks ago that there was no national security threat. That incensed a lot of FBI agents, by all accounts.
Well, rightly so.
Right, and so there was talk that they then leaked information that indicated the probe was, in fact, very serious and uncovering national security implications just to protect their own reputation and to keep, the legitimacy of the probe up. So that could be one reason why these leaks are coming. But another reason, like John said, could be that the Clintons want to manipulate the narrative. Because
they're very, very good. I remind everybody who's young and meeting the Clintons for the first time, they're the best there is. Absolutely. All right. Nobody beats the Clintons. Nobody whatsoever. If it ever happens, the world has changed profoundly. Sarah, one other addition we have here. We have to deal with it. The State Department is also releasing documents. And you do a wonderful job. They give you about, 35 minutes to file, and they put an enormous pile of emails in your email, and you go through them. Where is the State Department in this? Are they ahead? Are they behind? Are they dragging their feet? I remember the last time we talked about this, they were disappointingly giving only a percentage of what they were supposed to.
Now they've caught up. They caught a lot of criticism for being slow. They've hired a few more people, and now they've involved the intelligence community, so they're not struggling on their own to come up with these classifications decisions. They have somebody in-house that's helping them. And so they really just want to get this over with as soon as possible.
But they only want to get it over with because federal judges have forced them to divulge these emails, correct? They're not doing it of their own volition.
No, but at first, through these FOIA productions, they were going slow. And a lot of times, a judge will put forward a timeline to release documents under the Freedom of Information Act, and the defendant, the government, will come back and say, we can't, we're underfunded, and the judge will let that slide. But this case is so high profile that they're under a lot of pressure to just get it done, and that's what you see happening now.
Mrs. Clinton is a candidate for the presidency. Mrs. Carly Fiorina is a candidate for the presidency. Striking, because Mary watched the Milwaukee debate, so she can help me here. All I was able to see was the closing remarks by some of the candidates because I was on air. And I saw Carly Fiorina's closing statement right at the camera, right at Mrs. Clinton, and I summarize only mildly by saying, I'm coming for you, Hillary Clinton. Is that the Fiorina strength, is it to continue this attack on Mrs. Clinton?
Absolutely. I mean, that's her most notable strength, is as an attack dog to Hillary Clinton, as a counterweight to Hillary Clinton, not just because of her gender, but because of her policies and her beliefs. They are so different from Hillary Clinton. And so even if you don't see Carly Fiorina ever catch fire to become the Republican nominee, you'll definitely see her play a role all the way to the end of this election because she's so good at making the case against Hillary Clinton.
May I also note that she differs in terms of her life experience, working her way up to the top, really by fingernails, crawling her way up, and also her character. There is no indication that Carly Fiorina was ever involved in a mucky kind of transaction like Whitewater or a private email server. She's seen as a very clean politician, which is another big difference.
You're exactly right. I mean, there's so many elements to her story. I mean, she's a cancer survivor. She, had a stepdaughter that died of drug abuse. She has a very compelling life narrative. Hillary Clinton has what could be considered the opposite of that. She spent her entire life in government. She lives a very privileged, cushy life, and all of the populism that she tries to throw around, I mean, that feels contrived. It doesn't when you're talking to someone who worked her way from a secretary to a CEO.
I puzzle because I didn't mention this beforehand. I'm going to go carefully at this. I've seen a trailer that's going around. It bounced in front of me called 13 Hours. It's the Mitchell Zukov movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've both seen the trailer on this.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw it for the first time today. And I looked at that, especially the line where it said we didn't want to do politics. And I'm looking at this, I've just gone, are you kidding me? Hollywood's gone completely over the top. Am I seeing what I'm seeing?
What we learned in Hillary Clinton's last testimony is that she handpicked an ambassador. She sent him into a zone that she knew was dangerous. She either ignored his pleas for help or she so mismanaged the State Department she didn't get the pleas for help. She knew it was a terrorist attack. She lied to the father of one of the victims, and then she allowed that lie to be perpetuated in the national media for weeks.
I add one detail, Mary, because it struck me in the Benghazi hearing recently. Mrs. Clinton told Chelsea Clinton, using a nom de guerre of Diane Reynolds for no reason I've ever understood, told her that night while the attack was ongoing. We can see on screen that the CIA annex is under attack, while we now know at the same time Mrs. Clinton's writing an email to Diane Reynolds saying it was an al-Qaeda-linked group launching the attack. So when I saw that movie, I thought, what has happened? How can this be? It's going up on the screens on January.
Because at that point in time, the president was in the middle of a re-election campaign on the platform that Al-Qaeda had been defeated, and they couldn't allow this narrative that there was a terrorist attack on 9/11 where they killed an ambassador, the first since the 1970s, by the way, death of an American ambassador. They could not let that narrative into the national consciousness. It's craven, it's distasteful, and I think it's frankly immoral.
And the puzzle, it hits in January, Sarah. This is going through the timeline you're working with at the State Department when you see these emails. You see the Mrs. Clinton's emails bounce. We don't have all of them. We don't have the emails to the White House.
We'll never have the tens of thousands that she deleted.
Maybe.
No.
Okay. Sarah, Isn't this a political document, this movie? Doesn't it strike you that the Clinton campaign is going to have to absorb this spectacular Hollywood treatment of Americans under attack and no help coming?
It's entirely possible, but keep in mind that it's based off a book that's already been in the public eye for years now.
Right.
So there's not likely to be any bombshell revelations.
But does anyone read anymore, Sarah?
And here's my offset to that. All the President's Men. It's a book, yes, and there are the facts of the the Watergate investigation. And then there's that movie. And I know because I saw the movie in real time, I thought that was the story for many years until I did my homework and realized that the facts of Watergate don't support that whispering in the garage, remember, with the Deep Throat character. So I'm struck that even if the movie takes some advantages, timelines and all of that, it is a ferocious condemnation of the Obama administration, Mrs. Clinton in particular, sitting by and allowing Americans to come all by themselves under attack.
It could certainly be because, like Mary said, I mean, the aftermath of the attack was calculated because of Barack Obama's re-election campaign, but so was the lead up to the attack. That's why our security posture was the way it was. That's why we didn't have reinforced security in Benghazi. We didn't want to give the appearance of anything being wrong in Libya. So the failings of that night are directly tied back to Obama's campaign.
Final question to you, Sarah. You see these documents. You see the ones during the Benghazi and then years later because they continued to talk about them. Do you get a sense of regret, of remorse, of tragedy from these documents? Is there a scale commensurate with what we now know happened at Benghazi?
I think at the time you get a sense from the documents that maybe they didn't even grasp the gravity of what was happening, that in the moment it just seemed like maybe any other night, and it wasn't until it was too late that they realized this could have major implications.
Sarah Westwood from the Washington Examiner. She's an investigative reporter, and watch her stories very carefully about, as we go forward, the email in Mrs. Clinton's server and its security. There are documents here. We may never see many of the documents in question. In fact, we won't. However, Sarah's reporting will help us understand what we can see. Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal and the host of Opinion Journal. I'm John Batchelor.